The member for Sandringham.
Speaker, I rise to lead the opposition's contribution on the matter of public importance today because I could not think of a more important thing that this parliament should be discussing at the moment. I think it's sometimes easy for the political class to forget why they are here. And we're not here for ourselves, Speaker. We are here for those who sent us here. We are here to advocate for those people, to fight for those people. And at the moment, there is great suffering around this state. We want, on this side of the House, every Victorian to thrive, not just to survive. Now, why? Because we believe in the inherent dignity, responsibility and potential of every single Victorian, no matter their stage in life. We believe we all have a responsibility, Speaker, to assist and protect those who are vulnerable or disadvantaged. We believe people should be free to pursue their goals, to create value for themselves and others, and to be rewarded for their efforts. And we believe that free enterprise is the best pathway to achieving economic growth, wellbeing and prosperity. But sadly, Speaker, things are getting harder, not easier for Victorians who, despite their best efforts, find themselves, frankly, pushing the proverbial up the hill with a fork, and the Labor government in this state's record debt, addiction to increased taxes and culture of waste is certainly not helping. Now, Speaker, for many Victorian families, it's getting harder, not easier, to make ends meet. Paying the rent or mortgage repayments is ever increasing. Putting food on the table and paying other bills is also getting increasingly difficult. And it seems like every other day, another household bill has just gone up. Disposable income is drying up and many households are tapping into their dwindling savings just to make ends meet. The facts are deeply concerning and should be of concern to every member of this place. The latest NAB financial hardship survey released on the 3rd of March this year revealed some shocking circumstances. 37% of Victorians have experienced financial hardship. 8% of Victorians experience being unable to pay rent on time, being the highest rate in the nation. 20% of Victorians experience not having enough when they experienced an emergency in their household. 15% of Victorians experience not having enough for food and basic necessities. 13% of Victorians experience being unable to pay a bill. 12% of Victorians experience being unable to pay medical bills. 21% of Victorians struggled very much just simply to make ends meet. Now, there are lots of assumptions made in politics, and I just want to clear up one of those. I was born at the Sandringham Hospital. I grew up in Beaumaris, in what some may see as a part of affluent Bayside. But my story is akin to those hardships that are being experienced by Victorians at the moment. My mother, a hard-working person, an immigrant to this country, to make ends meet in our household, would take baskets of ironing, she'd clean houses, and she would look after children to make ends meet in our household. She taught me hard work. She taught me the value of hard work. She's been an inspiration to me, a person who strives to do their very best to achieve what they've achieved in their own life. So I think in the course of this debate, assumptions about those on this side of the chamber, who we represent and the people we represent, and those stereotypes are particularly unhelpful. It's through hard, personal, lived experience that I stand here and speak to you, Speaker, about the matters being experienced by Victorians today. It's of great distress to me and to members on this side of the chamber that Melbourne is the most expensive city to send your kid to school. I know this, again, because my eldest daughter, Abby, just started primary school this year. In Melbourne alone, the average cost to send a kid to school per child is more than $102,000, close to $103,000. That's 17% higher than the national metropolitan average for government schools, which sits at just over $87,000. It's over $13,000 more per child than in Sydney government schools. Despite Melbourne having the most expensive city in the country to educate a child, it's of great concern to this side of the chamber that the Andrews Labor government spends the least per student of any state in the nation. Data from the report on government services shows that in 2020-2021, Victoria only spent $11,570 per student across all sectors. This is lower than New South Wales and Queensland and Western Australia as well. Why must every Victorian Victorian parent be forced to pay more than every other state to send their child to school, while the Andrews Labor government gets away with spending the least on every child for their education? These back-to-school costs, Speaker, are ever growing. We estimate that it costs an average of $944 per child in 2023 to send a child to school. That's broken down over uniform costs, textbooks, transportation, school camps, school equipment, excursions, and the costs just keep on rising, impacting Victorian families. State schools, of course, across the state are calling out for additional state government to support to meet the shortfall in school budgets. As the member for Sandringham, every year I visit each of my schools, primary and secondary, across all three sectors and catch up with the principals, something which they've expressed to me quite clearly following the agreement of the new teacher EBA last year, is that the cost of actually putting on things like school camps is going up. So the Andrews Labor government agrees to the new teacher EBA, which costs a local primary school in this state more to run because of the circumstances of that EBA, but they don't top up the school budget in order to offset the cost of the new EBA. It's my view that the Andrews Labor government should do everything it can to enable every opportunity for Victorian children within Victoria's state primary and secondary schools, and if that means topping up budgets to give every child the opportunities that they deserve, they must consider doing just that. Now, on the matter of energy price increase, up to $1,000 over this year alone. Now, the average cost of household gas bills will increase by around $675, representing a 45% increase. Households in Melbourne's eastern suburbs and Gippsland are faced with the steepest rise in energy bills, with an increase of up to $995. This is across households in Kilmore, Seymour, Violettown, Ngambie, Wangaratta, Chiltern, Wodonga, the Latrobe Valley and in Sale. But when asked in Parliament, Andrews government ministers could not give a date for when the rebooted SEC, which they're spending $1 billion to set up, would actually have an effect on bringing down the cost of rising energy bills in this state. Victoria's transition to net zero carbon emissions must be affordable. We must not throw away Victoria's competitive edge without concern or care for the significant industry skills and economic repercussions that may very well come from doing that. Supporting the development of more gas will deliver cheaper bills to Victorian and ultimately mean a faster and more reliable path to a renewable transition. Now, the uncertainty as to how exactly the SEC will work is also of great concern to us as well. Will it in fact crowd out the urgently required private sector investment in renewables? And on the government's one-off power-saving bonus of $250, although welcomed and necessary, it's but a drop in the ocean when it comes to the increasing cost of electricity bills to Victorian families. On the matter of the threat of an increasing work cover levy, which was highlighted in this place just yesterday, of course, it's Victorian businesses who now have to pay the price for the action or inaction, in this case, of the Andrews Labor government. The current levy sits at about 1.2%, and the Andrews Labor government received a report in December 2020 suggesting that to make the scheme viable it needed to increase it to 1.5%, representing a 17% increase. So the Andrews Labor government has known, Speaker, for some time that work cover is broken. And I suggest to you, Speaker, that the reason why work cover is broken is because the Andrews Labor government broke it. Now, we all know how this runs. In yesterday's Age, Luke Hilikari, the Secretary of the Victorian Trades Hall Council, the state's peak body for unions, said it was time for businesses to pay higher premiums. Quote, we have some of the lowest contributions from businesses as a percentage of any other state or territory. That's a major problem, Mr Hilikari said. We all know how this works. The tail wags the dog. The unions say jump, the government says how high, and the fact is that every Victorian will be paying the price for the inaction of the Andrews Labor government when Victorian work cover premiums increase. It will be Victorians who are paying the price of that. You compare that to the former coalition government between the years of 2010 and 2014. When we were last in government, we cut the work cover premium not once, but twice. Not once, but twice. And in fact, we actually drew down a dividend on the scheme to provide a greater service provision for the Victorian people. That's our record when it comes to work cover in this state. And yes, I agree with Trades Hall Council. Our premium is comparatively low to other states in the nation. But that is Victoria's competitive edge, and the risk that we have with increasing the work cover levy to 1.5% is that existing competitive edge will be lost. There is no clear repayment plan for the state's debt. Just under $166 billion worth of state net debt at the moment, with an annual interest bill of nearly $4 billion. Which of course increased yesterday on the back of the Reserve Bank's increase to interest rates. Net debt of Victoria is set to reach $165.9 billion, Speaker, by 25-26, the highest debt of any state in the nation. In fact, more than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined. And by 25-26, the forecast interest repayment will be $7.4 billion. Now, I'll tell you why this irritates me, Speaker. This irritates me because that $7.4 billion is paid to service a debt which the Andrews Labor government have no obvious plan to pay off. $7.4 billion that could have been spent on service delivery in this state, to get more police into communities, to get more nurses into hospitals, to get more teachers into schools. This is the missed opportunity by no obvious plan to repay our debt. And of course, Speaker, the Andrews Labor government is addicted to waste. The North East Link cost overruns, the Westgate Tunnel cost overruns, the Metro Tunnel cost overruns. More than $30 billion in waste and cost blowouts under this government alone. And we don't know yet the impact of the government's suburban rail loop promise. But if history is anything to go by, Speaker, the only way is down. Now, just finally, Speaker, I think this is absolutely critical and perhaps the most important part of this matter of public importance today. One of the biggest issues holding Victoria back from being the top state in the nation once again is a skills crisis, with no plan from the Andrews Labor government to address the skills shortage. Victorian industries virtually across the board have been facing a labour shortage in the post-COVID era. Victoria is experiencing a skills crisis in areas like health, disability care, teaching, plumbing, mechanics, hospitality. We know that. By the government's figures alone, there is a nearly 4,000 skilled worker shortage by 2025, with no obvious plan to fix it. But, Speaker, there is an alternative. There is an alternative. Victoria's alternative government, we, the opposition here, believe that it's the private sector who creates wealth and prosperity in this nation, not the public sector. Labor want a tax. We want to increase opportunity. We want to attract investment. We want every Victorian to do and to be their best, for them to thrive, not just survive. Every Victorian, Speaker, deserves better than what they're getting from the Andrews Labor government at the moment.